Everybody, another quick lunch break legal lecture on the Constitution for you. Headed into tonight's first debate of Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. I just want to remind you of a couple of things about the Constitution heading into it. You're going to hear a lot of banter thrown back and forth because pretty much when politicians debate and when they speak, they depend on you not knowing what they're talking about. Fair? All right? Our government is broken up into a system called federalism. There's three basic levels to our government. You have the federal level, which is the president, Congress, all of that. You have the state level, and then you have the local level, which could be your county, could be your city, could be your neighborhood homeowners association. There's a bunch of different levels. And each level, to an extent, can operate independently from the other levels. Now, of course, the federal level trumps everything. Trump used to be a word we could use to mean like it beats everything, but now obviously it's a person's name, so I don't want my younger students to get confused here. The federal level is supreme. If they make a rule, everybody else has to follow it. But what if they don't make a rule? What if something's not covered under federal law or under the Constitution? That's what I want to deal with right now. See, the guys who wrote our Constitution, these are products of the Enlightenment. They are extremely well-read. I promise, if you're watching this video, you're probably not as well-read as anybody who's writing on that document because you've relied on videos, in my opinion, rather than looking at it yourself, right? These men of the Enlightenment all spoke different languages, all had studied multiple religions, multiple legal documents. They were absolute scholars, and they prided themselves in that more than anything else. So when we talk about the Founding Fathers, it's not like a bunch of guys got together at a pub and went, hey, man, you want to make some rules? Yeah, let's start a government. These were the sharpest minds on the planet who lived for the library, right? And don't forget, we had already started one government called the Articles of Confederation that lasted 8 years or so and was a miserable failure. So when they came to write the Constitution, if you read the preamble, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union. Well, more perfect than what? More perfect than those articles? Those articles suck, man. The Articles of Confederation led to rebellion and breakdown and almost the dissolution of America. So they got together to troubleshoot the documents they already had. We're not writing the Constitution from scratch. We're taking governments of the world and one that we've tried among our people and said, okay, we tried this, it didn't work, let's fix it. We tried this, it didn't work. And they did it without arguing, and they did it without the slander and the nastiness that you see in politics today. So it's hard for people today to wrap their head around the fact that, yes, there could be a bunch of very well-read, knowledgeable, honorable, honest people sitting around in a room writing this document. Because you don't see that much anymore. But it was a different time back then. It was the Enlightenment. That was normal back then. In the Constitution, the way it's laid out, we have the articles that set up the government, and then you have the amendments where they go back and add changes later as the people demand them. Amendment 10, the people demanded an amendment that says, if it's not in the Constitution, we're free to do it. Amendment 9 says, hey, if we didn't say you can't, then assume you can. You guys have used that on your parents, right? Parents, you remember you doing that as a kid? Going to your parent, well, you didn't say I couldn't. You're right. So run amok. This is America. You're free. If it's not listed, go for it. The 10th Amendment, if it's not specifically enumerated in the Constitution as a power of the federal government, you're free. Now, if your state wants to regulate it, your state can make a decision on that. If it's not in the Constitution, it automatically goes to your state. So if your state wants to say, you know what, you can smoke pot and we want to arrest you, like Colorado, well, there you go. If your state wants to legalize gay marriage, well, there you go. It's not in the Constitution, right? If your state wants to make abortion super accessible, they can. Now, they can't take away rights that have been given to you, and this is where the Supreme Court comes in. If you have been not granted, but if your right that you were born with has not yet been limited by the Constitution, then the state can't take it away either. To an extent. We're going to get there. All right? Article 4 of the Constitution deals with how states relate to each other, because what if you have like Alabama and you have California, and they are not similar in many ways, other than the land is beautiful and the people are American. That's about the line there. And we all speak the same languages, maybe. Article 4, what we call the full faith and credit clause. If it's legal in one state and you do it there, the other states must recognize that decision, because each state is equal in the eyes of the government and in the eyes of the Constitution. Let me give you an example. In Alabama, just a few years ago, we had a lawsuit where two women were married in, I believe it was California, where it was legal to have gay marriage. Gay marriage was banned in Alabama. We said, no, you can't do that here. Well, the Constitution doesn't talk about it. And it was a big national hot topic. Should we pass an amendment? All this kind of stuff. But then a lawyer got smart and said, well, we'll just use the full faith and credit clause of Article 4. So they will move to Alabama and force the state of Alabama to recognize them as a married couple. They applied for adoption, and Alabama said, no, you're not legally married, so we can't deal with this. They sue. Article 4, full faith and credit clause, if they're legally married in California, they're legally married in Alabama, and thus entitled to all of the things of legally married people. Bam, we don't have to do an amendment, because the Constitution, written in all of its geniusness, if that's a real word, has just covered that situation for us, right? Go back to, I think it's the 90s. Britney Spears got wasted in Las Vegas and married a high school friend. When she got back to Louisiana, she was still married, because in Las Vegas, you don't have to be sober to make that decision. You can go to the little chapel and get married in however you want, under influence of whatever you want. If you're legally married there, you're legally married here. And if you go to Las Vegas and you contract a government-supplied pleasure worker, you don't get arrested for it in Alabama, where that act is illegal. If smoking pot is illegal in Alabama, if you smoke it in Colorado, where it is legal, we will not arrest you when you land in the Birmingham airport for what you did in Colorado. We must recognize the sovereignty and the laws of the other states as you cross the borders. So here's where this comes into tonight's debates. When we get down to the topics of, say, the Supreme Court nominee, abortion's a real hot topic right now. That's just, they're going to be arguing that. Can that right be taken away from you? No. Can it be limited? Yes. Each state determines the culture within its state. The federal government under the Constitution was designed simply to take care of international commerce, to provide for the common defense of the people, put down insurrections, defend against invasions, things like that. It was never designed to rule your everyday life. In fact, Amendment 9 says, go for it. If it's not in the Constitution, you run amok, man. This is America. You're free. Go wild. But then each state gets to determine the culture of its state. Hey, if you want to go just like really hog wild, go out to Wyoming. They don't care what you do out there. Hey, go out to California. They don't care what you do out there. Around here, we're a little more conservative. And the beauty of it is you're free to move to the town, to the state that you agree with, because we're going to honor the contracts, we're going to honor your citizenship, we're going to honor your marriage, we're going to honor everything. Let's go back to the debate on slavery. Right? Was slavery wrong? Oh, yeah, it was pretty wrong. It was an awful thing. Was it legal? Yes. Why was it legal? Because it was not covered in the Constitution. The Constitution did not address human slavery. It was addressed on the state level. So some states banned it and other states accepted it, and it was legal. And if you bought a human in a state where it was legal and you crossed over into a border of a state where it was illegal, under Article 4, they must recognize your ownership of that slave. Civil War comes around. How do we deal with this? We put it in the Constitution. Amendment 13. Nobody's going to own any other person ever, anywhere. Boom, it's outlawed everywhere. It took a constitutional amendment. Until then, it was state to state. Marriage, state to state. We all have a story of grandparents who were too young to get married, so they went to Texas, where you can get married at like 6. I'm exaggerating. You get married at 13, or at least you could at one time, right? We've all got stories about that. So if you want a service not offered, not readily accessible in your state, all you have to do is cross the state line. You won't get in trouble for it. You're free to do it. They accept the same currency in every state. They speak the same language in every state. And that's how America is designed. It was never supposed to be everybody under the exact same laws, under the exact same culture, because where's the freedom in national conformity? There is none. It's supposed to be 50 individual states. We call them laboratories for democracy. 50 individual laboratories where we see what works best for your people. You find the group you fit in the best, just like picking a seat in the cafeteria, and you hang out with those people, but you're all united in defense and trade should trouble come from the outside. Does that make sense? Don't let them fool you in the debate tonight and tell you that everybody should think the same thing. That's not in the Constitution. But if you want it in the Constitution, what you'll have to do is get 2/3 of Congress, both houses of Congress, to agree to it. They'll send it out to the states. 3/4 of all states must agree to it. And if you have that much of a vast majority of the people agreeing to it, we'll put it in the Constitution, we'll make it permanent, we'll make it official. Until then, enjoy your freedoms and enjoy your diversity.